She chose her career over our marriage, so I took both. I exposed their affair to the CEO, filed for divorce, and watched them lose their jobs, their reputation, and each other. For the first 4 months I thought I was the problem. I want you to sit with that. 4 months of a man genuinely believing that his own perception was broken. That the distance he felt from his wife was his fault. That the anxiety in his chest every time she mentioned her VP's name was evidence of his own damage. 4 months of apologizing for noticing things that were real. Of shrinking himself to fit into the shape of what she said he should be. I was not the problem. But she made me believe I was. And that is the part of this story I need you to understand before anything else. Not the evidence. Not the CEO. Not the day it all came down. The 4 months before that. The 4 months when I was the Bashara husband sitting across the dinner table from a woman who was lying to my face and simultaneously convincing me that my discomfort with being lied to was a character flaw. That's where this story starts. Not with revenge. With a man who had forgotten what it felt like to trust his own eyes. My name is Ethan. I am 36 years old. I have a degree in data analytics and I work for a mid-size logistics firm where I build systems that find patterns in information. That is my profession. I find patterns. I document them. I present them cleanly. This will become relevant. My wife's name was Emily. We met at 27, married at 30, and spent 6 years building what I genuinely believed was a real life. Not a perfect life. A real one. With arguments and repairs and the kind of accumulated understanding that takes years to develop between two people who actually try. Emily was ambitious in the way some people are ambitious when they've been told their whole lives that they have to work twice as hard to get half the credit. I respected that ambition. I built my schedule around it. I took on more of the domestic weight without complaint because she was building something and I believed in what she was building and I believed in her. Her VP's name was Lucas Hart. 41. 14 years at Meridian Financial Group. His LinkedIn listed him as a strategic visionary with a track record of developing high-potential talent. He had a wife named Rebecca and a son who played travel baseball. She mentioned him first as brilliant. Then as a real advocate for her career. Then as someone who saw what others missed. By the time she was describing him as a mentor and a champion, I had already felt the specific temperature change that happens in a marriage when someone's attention is dividing. I said something. Once. Early. I said, Emily, I feel like you're somewhere else lately. I said I want to know if there's something going on with us that we need to talk about. She put down her fork. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Patient. Clinical. Like a doctor preparing to explain something to someone who isn't going to want to hear it. She said, Ethan, I think you have a pattern of feeling threatened by my success. She said every time I make progress professionally you pull inward. She said she had noticed it at her last promotion too and she had let it go but now she was seeing it again. She said she thought it would be worth examining why her advancement made me feel insecure. I sat with that for a moment. I said I don't think that's what's happening. She said I know it doesn't feel that way to you. She said that's part of the pattern. She picked her fork back up. She continued eating. The conversation was over. I sat across from her and I felt the specific vertigo of a man who has just been told that his perception of reality is a symptom of his own deficiency. I sat with it long enough that by the time dinner was done I had half convinced myself she was right. She was not right. But she was good at this. Month 2. I tried again. Not about Lucas specifically. About us. About the distance. About the fact that she came home later and left earlier and our conversations had a quality of performance to them that I couldn't name but could feel in my sternum every time she spoke. She said, Ethan, do you realize how exhausting this is? She said she was working at a level that required everything she had. She said she needed a partner at home, not another thing to manage. She said she was starting to feel like her success was actually a threat to me and that was something I needed to deal with. I said I'm not threatened by your success. I said I'm worried about our marriage. She said those might be the same thing. She got up and went to take a bath. I sat on the couch. I stared at the wall. 2 months of being told that my concern was the problem. 2 months of a woman replacing the substance of an argument with a diagnosis of my character. I was not angry yet. I was confused. When someone you trust tells you repeatedly that your perception is broken, you start to wonder if they're right. That's the design. I understand that now. The design is to make you question yourself long enough that you stop looking outward and start looking inward. While you're busy examining your own damage, they have all the time they need. I went inward for 2 more months. Month 3 was when the cracks started showing in their construction. Not because she made mistakes. Emily was careful. She is a careful woman. The cracks showed because I started paying a different kind of attention. Not emotional attention. Analytical attention. I am a data analyst. I find patterns. I had been trying to address this situation emotionally and emotionally I kept losing. So I stopped addressing it emotionally. I started treating it the way I treated a project at work. What data do I have? The data I had. She was working late on a consistent pattern. Not random late nights. The same days weekly with occasional variation. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes Friday. Never Monday. Never Wednesday. Her work phone, which I had never monitored and would not monitor, sat differently on the counter than it used to. Face down where it used to sit face up. Password changed 3 months ago for what she described as a company security update. A charge on our joint card for a restaurant I didn't recognize. A Tuesday evening. A restaurant $40 a head minimum based on a quick search. She had mentioned on that Tuesday that she was eating at her desk. These are data points. Not evidence. Data points. A data analyst knows the difference. I needed more data points. I also needed help. I called my college friend Raymond. Raymond spent 8 years as a corporate compliance officer before moving to consulting. He knows how large financial institutions operate from the inside. He knows what their policies say and he knows what happens when those policies are violated. I bought him lunch. I said hypothetically. He nodded. He is a man who understands hypothetically. I described the situation in neutral terms. A senior VP. A direct report. A trajectory of increasing closeness. The possibility that company resources were being used in ways adjacent to the relationship. Raymond put down his fork. He said Meridian Financial Group. I had not said the company name. He said they're a client of mine. Past client. He said they have one of the most detailed conflict of interest policies in the regional financial sector. He said any romantic relationship between a supervisor and a direct report is a mandatory disclosure. He said failure to disclose is a terminable offense for the supervisor and potentially for the direct report depending on their role level. He said if company resources were involved it crossed from HR territory into legal territory. He said that included business class travel, executive suite hotel bookings, client entertainment accounts used for non-client purposes, and any expenses that could be characterized as personal benefit derived from professional authority. I said how would someone document something like that? He said carefully. He said with dates and cross-references and a clear chain of custody for every piece of information. He said if someone ever brought a formal complaint to the CEO rather than HR, and did so with complete documentation, a board-level company like Meridian would be legally obligated to investigate. He said the CEO reports to a board with fiduciary responsibilities. He said a CEO who received credible documented evidence and did not act would have personal liability. He said the thing about these situations is that the cover-up is usually worse than the original violation. I said I appreciate the hypothetical. I said the lunch was good. He said Ethan. Just take care of yourself. I said I was planning on it. Month 4 was the shift. I did not stop being the quiet husband at dinner. I did not change the temperature of my behavior in any way that Emily would have noticed. I brought her coffee in the mornings. I asked about her day. I listened to the edited versions she gave me and I said the right things. Underneath that I was building. The personal laptop came first. Mine alone. Work stays at work. Home machine is for everything personal including the folder I labeled with a project number rather than a title because I am a professional and professionals label things with project numbers. The joint credit card statements I had access to through our shared account. I began reviewing them systematically. Not for smoking guns. For patterns. Because patterns are more reliable than smoking guns. What I found across 4 months of statements. 11 dinners at restaurants in the downtown financial district on Tuesday or Thursday evenings. On 5 of those evenings Emily had told me she was working through dinner at the office. 3 hotel charges. 2 at an executive suite property 20 minutes from their office. 1 at an airport hotel on the same weekend she attended what she described as a leadership conference. The conference existed. I verified it. The conference ran Friday through Sunday. The hotel charge was for a Wednesday and Thursday that preceded it. A car service charge on a Tuesday evening for a pickup at an address that mapped to Lucas Hart's residential neighborhood. None of this is proof of what I suspected. I want to be precise about that. A data analyst does not call a data point proof before it's been validated. What I had was a pattern that required explanation. And the explanations I had been given for specific instances did not match the pattern. I needed validation. I found it in month 5. Raymond had mentioned, in our hypothetical lunch, that Meridian's expense reporting system was audited quarterly by an external compliance firm. He had mentioned this as context. I filed it. The external compliance firm was named on Meridian's public investor relations page in their annual report. They were required to disclose their compliance partners. I found the firm. I found their public staff directory. I found a junior analyst at that firm who had worked on Meridian's account based on a LinkedIn recommendation she had posted publicly. I did not contact her. I did not need to. What I needed was what the annual report listed as the scope of their compliance review. Which included, verbatim, executive expense account audits cross-referenced with HR conflict of interest disclosures. Which meant that somewhere in a compliance audit there was a cross-reference between expense accounts and disclosed relationships. Which meant that an undisclosed relationship would create a gap. An expense pattern with no corresponding disclosure. I printed the relevant pages of the annual report. I added them to the folder. Then I spent 2 weeks building a timeline. Dates from the credit card statements. Dates from the compliance audit cycle listed in the annual report. Dates from Emily's stated schedule cross-referenced with what I could verify independently. What I had at the end of 2 weeks was not proof. What I had was a documented pattern of financial activity, schedule discrepancies, and resource usage that, absent an alternative explanation, pointed strongly toward what I already knew. I had one more step. Month 6. His name was Douglas Park, CEO of Meridian Financial Group. His email was listed on the company's investor contact page. Senior leadership contact for significant stakeholder concerns. I spent 3 evenings writing the email. Not drafting. Writing. The way you write something that matters. I wrote it 7 times. The first 4 versions were too emotional. A data analyst does not submit emotional reports. A data analyst submits findings. The final version was 4 paragraphs. Paragraph 1 introduced me. Husband of Emily Marsh, Senior Director of Strategic Accounts, direct report of Executive VP Lucas Hart. Paragraph 2 stated that I had reason to believe there was an undisclosed conflict of interest between the 2 named employees that implicated Meridian's conflict of interest policy and potentially its expense compliance framework. Paragraph 3 said I had attached a document outlining the factual basis for my concern, including dates, financial data points from accessible records, and schedule inconsistencies I had documented personally. I said I was not making allegations. I was providing information. I said I understood the company had obligations when credible concerns were raised to executive leadership. Paragraph 4 said I wanted to be clear that I was not seeking any particular outcome. I said I was not requesting employment action against anyone. I said I was fulfilling what I understood to be a civic and ethical responsibility when I had information that a company's leadership should be aware of. I attached a 41-page document. I had already filed for divorce 3 days earlier. I sent the email on a Thursday at 7:42 in the morning. I went to work. I want to tell you about the day. Not because I watched it unfold. I didn't. I was at my desk doing my job. But I know what happened because Douglas Park's office called me at 2:15 that afternoon and asked if I could speak with their general counsel. I said yes. The call lasted 22 minutes. She asked me to confirm certain factual details from the document. I confirmed them. She asked if I had originals of the financial records I had referenced. I said the joint credit card statements were accessible through our shared account and I could provide access. She said she would be in touch. She was in touch the following Monday. What happened between my Thursday email and that Monday I know in pieces. From my attorney who heard from Emily's attorney. From Raymond who had contacts. From a former colleague of Emily's who texted me 3 weeks later to say he thought I should know what the week had looked like from inside the building. Douglas Park had forwarded my email to the general counsel and the chief compliance officer within 4 hours of receiving it. By Friday morning, Lucas Hart had been called into a meeting with HR, the GC, and a senior partner from the external compliance firm. The 41 pages had created what my contact described as a cascade. Because the expense audit cross-reference that I had theorized about was real. And the gap that I had theorized would exist did exist. 14 expense entries flagged with no corresponding disclosure. Lucas Hart was placed on administrative leave Friday afternoon pending investigation. Emily was called in for a separate meeting Friday morning. She was told that her relationship with her supervisor was the subject of a compliance investigation. She was asked to provide a statement. Her statement, from what I understand, attempted to characterize the relationship as a mentorship. The 14 expense entries made that characterization difficult to sustain. She was placed on administrative leave Friday afternoon. By the end of the following week, both of their employment with Meridian Financial Group had been terminated. The terminations were effective immediately with no severance due to the policy violations involved. I know this because Emily's attorney communicated it in the context of divorce proceedings as a material change in her financial circumstances. I was at my desk both Fridays. Doing my job. Finding patterns in information. Emily called me the day she was placed on leave. I did not answer. She called 4 more times that day. I did not answer any of them. She sent a text that evening. The text said, "You did this." I looked at it for a long time. Then I put my phone face down and made dinner. She was right. I did do this. I want to be honest about that. I collected the information. I built the document. I sent the email. Every step of what happened was a step I chose to take. I am not going to frame it as something that just happened or as the inevitable consequence of her choices. I made choices too. Deliberate ones. I own them. What I also own is the 4 months before that. The 4 months of being told my perception was a symptom. Of sitting across a dinner table from a woman who was arranging her face carefully and simultaneously telling me that my discomfort with being lied to was evidence of my own damage. She chose to do that. I chose to respond to it. Both things are true. She sent a second text 2 days later. It said, "He left his wife because of you. He said it was my fault for not being careful. He blames me." I read that 3 times. Lucas Hart had told Emily that the exposure was her fault for not being more careful. The man she had chosen. The man she had built a double life around for 7 months. When the consequences arrived, he pointed at her. I did not feel satisfaction when I read that. I want to be precise about that because people expect satisfaction and I don't want to perform an emotion I didn't feel. What I felt was something quieter than satisfaction. A recognition. The specific recognition of a pattern revealing itself completely. A man who had used his institutional power to pursue a relationship with a direct report, who had charged the costs of that relationship to company resources, who had maintained it while his employee's husband sat at home being told his perception was broken. That man, when the structure collapsed, identified the person with less power as the cause. That's who he was. She had chosen someone who, under pressure, pointed at her. I put the phone down. I made coffee. The divorce has been filed. It will be finalized in approximately 5 months. My attorney is thorough and the documentation I maintained throughout this process has made the financial proceedings efficient in ways that would not have been possible otherwise. I want to talk about the gaslighting. Because it's the part people underestimate. Not the affair. The affair is a betrayal. It's a specific and familiar kind of pain that has a shape people recognize. You can name it. You can point at it. It has a clear outside edge. The gaslighting doesn't have a clear outside edge. It works by making the inside unreliable. By the time someone has told you 4 times that your concern is a symptom of your own character deficiency, a part of you starts building it into the framework of how you see yourself. I am someone who gets threatened by his wife's success. I am someone with a pattern of pulling inward. I am someone whose insecurity creates problems that my partner has to manage. None of that was true. But it had been said to me enough times, calmly and clinically, by a person I trusted, that it had started to become the lens through which I saw myself. The thing that broke it was not confronting Emily. The thing that broke it was sitting with a legal pad one evening in month 3 and writing down every concern I had expressed and every response she had given. And then reading it back to myself from the perspective of a third party. What I read was a man raising reasonable concerns and being told each time that the concern itself was the problem. Not addressed. Redirected. Every time. Without exception. That's not a conversation. That's a technique. When I saw it written down, it stopped working on me. You can gaslight a person. You cannot gaslight a dataset. I have been asked if I feel guilty. About Emily losing her job, no. Emily made choices that violated her employment contract and her company's policies. The consequence was the consequence. About Lucas losing his job, no. A man who used institutional power to pursue a subordinate and charged the company for the privilege and then blamed her when it collapsed deserves the consequence he received. About Rebecca, Lucas's wife. Their son who plays travel baseball. That one I sit with. Rebecca did not do anything wrong. The son did not do anything wrong. Their lives changed because of information I chose to surface. I cannot fully account for that cost. I can only tell you that I thought about it before I sent the email. I sat with it. I made the decision anyway. I made the decision because the alternative was absorbing a situation that was destroying me in order to protect the family of the man who was helping to destroy me. That calculus did not hold. But I carry it. I'm supposed to carry it. Some consequences have weight even when they're right. I have been asked what I would do differently. Month 1, I would have started the folder earlier. Not to change the outcome. To give myself the clarity sooner. The document was not just for Douglas Park. It was for me. Writing it down made it real in a way that being told I was perceiving things wrong had made it unreal. I should have started writing earlier. Month 3, I would have found Raymond earlier. Not for the compliance information. For the conversation where someone looked at me and said, "Ethan, just take care of yourself." I needed to hear that from someone outside the situation. I waited too long. Couples counseling, I did not go. She suggested it once in month 2 as a way to address what she called my patterns. I said I would think about it. I never went. In retrospect, I should have gone immediately, not because the marriage was salvageable, but because a couples counselor who witnessed her technique in a professional setting would have validated my perception in a way that would have shortened the 4 months of self-doubt. Those are the revisions. The core decision I do not second guess. The apartment is mine. Her name is being removed from the lease. She has already taken most of her belongings. There are a few things remaining in the closet that I am going to box and deliver to her parents' house where she is currently staying. I do not feel the absence the way I expected to feel it. I thought the apartment would feel empty. It feels clarified. Like a room that has been cleaned properly for the first time in a while. Not empty. Honest. I took 2 weeks off work after the email. Not because I was falling apart. Because I had been running at maximum capacity for 6 months while maintaining a surface that showed nothing and I owed myself decompression time. I went to see my parents. My mother made food. My father asked no questions the first 4 days and then on day 5 asked if I was okay. I said yes. He said, "You don't have to be okay." I said, "I know." I said, "I actually am." He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "You've always been good at seeing things clearly." He said, "I think sometimes that's hard to live with." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm proud of you." He did not specify what for. He didn't need to. I am back at work now. Back to finding patterns in data. Building systems. Making things legible that would otherwise be noise. It turns out that is useful in more contexts than I had previously appreciated. There is no dramatic final chapter here. No confrontation. No tearful conversation where we both said the true things. No moment of catharsis in a parking lot or a hallway. The ending of this marriage looked like a folder with 41 pages and a 4-paragraph email sent at 7:42 in the morning before I drove to work. It looked like a data analyst doing what data analysts do. The marriage is over. Her career is over in its current form. His career is over in a more permanent sense because the compliance violation creates industry documentation that follows a financial professional. They have not publicly stayed together. They may privately try. I don't know and I don't think about it. What I think about is simpler than people expect. I think about the man at the dinner table in month 1. The one who was told his perception was broken. The one who said I don't think that's what's happening and was told that's part of the pattern. That man was not wrong. That man was seeing clearly. He just needed a few months and a legal pad and a friend named Raymond and a 41-page document to prove it to himself. I think about that man every time someone asks me if the revenge was worth it. And I say it wasn't revenge. It was a data analyst presenting accurate findings to the appropriate stakeholders. The findings were correct. The stakeholders acted on them. That's how the system is supposed to work. The folder is still on the laptop. I will delete it when the divorce is final. Not before. When it's complete. I am someone who closes projects when they're done. The project is almost done. When it is, I will delete the folder. I will update my resume. I will go on with the life that is being built on a foundation of accurate information and honest perception and the specific confidence of a man who trusted his own eyes when someone very capable told him not to. I trusted my eyes. I built the document. I sent the email. Then I drove to work and found patterns in data and did my job. Because that is what I do. And I am very good at it. End.